Good morning, friends. This is Pastor Lorri from First United Methodist Church in Kirksville, and it is good to gather with you together on this Friday morning in December. We've been thinking about some of the Advent words from our candle lightings, and the word this week is peace that we've been thinking about. Now, as we've gone through the week, I've thought about the ways that peace sometimes comes in several different ways, right? Sometimes we have peace that is the presence of something. Maybe when all of your kids are gathered around, you sense a peace that they're all here. Maybe peace is a presence of something that you had long hoped for. Maybe that peaceful presence is a steaming mug of coffee on a cool morning. It could be the presence of any number of things. In the church, we talk about the presence of God as bringing peace. Now, other times, we sense peace most when it's an absence. I'm kind of down here in the early morning because one time we sometimes sense that peace is in the middle of the night or the early dawn. We sense this peace. It's the absence of the other sounds. It's the absence of the hustle and bustle. There is not much quiet peace like that right after a baby stops crying and drops off to sleep, right? It had been so loud and then suddenly it's so quiet in comparison. Sometimes peace, we use that word to describe the absence of fighting, the absence of war, the absence of struggle and strife. So it's just interesting as we're thinking about the Christmas story, how it involves both of those kinds of peace, both the absence of and the presence of. And in one of the devotionals I read this week, I was talking about the song Silent Night and the way that it's written, how the tune itself is a lullaby. And talking about the story of Mary and Joseph and how they were called at the very end of her pregnancy to come and take the census. Now, this was a part of the Roman peace, the Pax Romana, a peace that lasted for multiple hundreds of years, but it was a peace that came at a price. And you'll see I have friends joining me here this morning. Sometimes our furry friends, sometimes their presence is peaceful, and other times their presence, it's when they curl up and go to sleep that it gets peaceful, especially if my two might chase one another around a little bit. We'll see how this goes here. But she writes, we hear from Luke. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. The name Augustus had been given to Octavian through his military might and ascendancy over his rivals, and the peace he won was called the Pax Romana. This Roman peace lasted over 200 years, from about 31 BC, and spread throughout a vast empire. Its culture and achievements... Cat, you're not being very peaceful right now. Are still ones that we see today. And some of the roads that were built then, we can still find. It says this peace was won at a cost, though, because it came through absolute dominance and brutal domination. We've heard of some of its methods. We know one every Good Friday when we talk about the crucifixion of Jesus on the cross. Capital punishment happened in the arena by wild beasts. The practice of decimation, wiping out 90% of an area. It's into that world, into that form of peace, that peace that is the presence of cruelty. It's into that world that another form of peace comes. A different type of presence, the presence of Jesus Christ, the Pax Christi that we call it. And it's a very different type of peace, right? Not one that seeks to squelch anything that's different, but one that comes with the freedom to encounter all the consequences of one's actions, and in doing so, to discover the peace of Christ, the invitation rather than an order. And every Christmas we sing, "A silent night, holy night. Shepherds quake at the sight. Glories stream from heaven afar. Sleep in heavenly peace." These words speak peace to the world, and so does that very form of music. It's a lullaby type of style. Musicians, you may correct me if this author gets it wrong, but she says its rhythm is a specific style called a Siciliana, a slow, lilting, rocking rhythm that in Baroque music evoked pastoral scenes and images of shepherds and sheep safely grazing, as on the hillsides of Sicily. Its rhythm is also used in Handel's Messiah in the aria, "He shall feed his flock like a shepherd." The words and the music evoke the comfort and freedom of sheep who can roam freely and eat their fill, and the tenderness and vigilance of a good shepherd who watches over his sheep and guards them from harm. So as we think about peace, how do we lean into that? How do we practice that? Well, one of the things that I read in a different spot suggested a practice for when you're in need of peace, of looking for the light. I think it's one reason why we often, when we talk about our favorite Christmas images, we talk about sitting in the dark, in the light of a tree with its lights on. Now, my tree doesn't actually have its lights on yet. That's a project for this weekend. And so one of my practices of peace will be putting the lights on it, looking for the lights, right? One year I realized that once the tree goes down after Christmas, it leaves a gaping hole, and I missed those lights, especially because January and February can feel like some of the darkest months. And so not too long ago, I found some lights that don't need a Christmas tree. And so I got a couple of these little sets of little lights that I can turn on that have that same type of Christmas light kind of feeling. And so sometimes when I need peace, I turn them on. We look for the light, right? People who notice stars in the sky or take an extra moment for the sunrise haven't known only joy in their lives. They usually have experienced the cold, black-blue waters of struggle and the long, quiet hours of sorrow. Their circumstances have taught them how to just sit and let things be, because in the waking hours of grief and despair, sometimes that's all you can do. And the longer they sat there, the more they noticed everything that went unnoticed when all seemed right. They learned not to take things for granted. They learned to treasure where they saw the light. And she goes on to say, may we learn to be less afraid of the shadows. And may we realize that just because they're a part of the picture, that doesn't mean that's all there is. We can name them. We can push into the dark and trust that we'll be able to breathe deep there, to openly and honestly talk about what we've been through, to breathe through it, to speak up about our fears and breathe through them too. And that may we also look for the light, to embrace reality and still find a sense of comfort in the lights that we do see. And that maybe part of practicing peace is learning to hold both shadow and light. And so as we close today, I'm going to leave us with a blessing for Advent peace. This is from Kate Bowler. O God, we are waiting, we are longing for you, O Prince of Peace. Come and reign in our hearts, settle in us quiet expectancy, that as sure as day follows night, you will come and be for us the wonder the world cannot give, the light that shows us how to see, the wisdom that teaches us how to move with you, how to keep pace with you, and when we are troubled, how to still ourselves in the certainty that you are and ever will be our peace. God have mercy. Christ have mercy. Spirit have mercy. So friends, go in peace into these days ahead. We hope to see you this weekend on Sunday in person or online, and then I will see you here again next week. Take care, friends. May you see the light.